Hey y'all, good evening. Thank you for joining me, Dorothea, on Through an Orthodox Christian Lens. It's July 24th, 2025. I have a few stories to share with you and just a little tiny clip of video, and gonna compare some Orthodox Christian prophecies since we're in those phases of the war, World War III. I'm going to start here on this story. Israel behind mysterious blasts across Iran since end of 12-day war. I have not read this article yet, but the title didn't have me surprised at all, because the track record of Israel breaking ceasefires and is very high. And this wasn't even a ceasefire, it was just a cessation in ceasing striking each other. But apparently, as I just said, Israel didn't really stop that. Now, of course, as I said, that's how they operate. So this wasn't too much of a surprise. In any case, the head of Israel's Mossad agency vowed one day after the war ended that it would continue operations in Iran. Of course it would. This came out yesterday. Officials cited by the New York Times on July 23rd said they suspect Israel to be behind the mysterious explosions which have taken place across the country since the end of the 12-day war in June. Many of them were acts of sabotage, 3 Iranian officials said, including one member of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. A European official also told New York Times that he assessed the attacks as sabotage and suspected Israel of involvement. Interesting. A lot of us think that it is Israel's doing and that war is going to start again, a resident of the city of Kashan told the outlet, adding that he feels scared and paranoid about a potential resumption of the war between Iran and Israel. Mahdi Mohammadi, Iranian politician and senior advisor to the head of Iran's parliament, said if anyone thinks we are dealing with linear events that we can predict, they are naive. We are not even in a ceasefire now. We are in a fragile suspension, and any minute it can end, and we are back at war. He added, one person was killed on Saturday by a fire that erupted at Iran's largest oil refinery, Abadan. Firefighters put out the blaze, and operations remained unaffected, state media said, blaming the fire on a leaky gas pump. On July 14, 7 people were injured in an explosion at a residential complex in the city of Qom. The unit that exploded appeared to have been rented by operatives who had left the building after turning on the stove and oven gas, as if to deliberately spark a blaze, 2 Iranian officials told the New York Times. Another recent explosion struck a high-rise building that offers housing to Iranian judiciary employees. The report claims Tehran has shrugged off the incidents in public so as not to corner itself into retaliation. The 12-day Israel-Iran war came to an end on June 24th. One day later, the director of Israel's Mossad intelligence agency, David Barnea, or however you say that, vowed to continue operations inside the Islamic Republic. We will remain vigilant, keeping a close eye on all the projects in Iran, which we know of in the deepest way. We will be there as we have been until now. Throughout the war, the Mossad was behind the launching of hundreds of small internally developed drones, which launched attacks across the country, particularly against air defenses and other military sites. Tehran has been working to clear the country of spies, regularly announcing arrests and the foiling of espionage networks. The New York Times report comes as Tel Aviv has been threatening to resume its war against Iran. During a situation assessment with senior military officials, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said Tuesday evening that Tel Aviv may consider resuming its campaign against Iran. Well, we all expected this. We expect this. He called for an effective enforcement plan. Of course, he has to be rearmed and all that because they got pummeled in that 12-day war, as they put it. He called for an effective enforcement plan to prevent Iran from restoring its nuclear and missile programs. Iranian President Mossad Pezeshkian told Al Jazeera that Iran's forces are prepared to carry out hard blows targeting Israel's depth. We do not want war and do not rely on the certainty of a ceasefire. We will defend ourselves with power. Okay. Not really a surprise. They've been doing this. This is just how they operate, how Mossad operates. But I thought I'd bring this to your attention so you're aware. Another important story. Let's see if I can find it among all these tabs. Is where did it go? Here. Today in, can't pronounce that town or city, the naval flag was raised on the new strategic nuclear-powered missile submarine. Can't pronounce that either, but I think it's Knyaz Pozharsky of Project 955A. Today in that place, as it was said in that title, this is already the 8th SSBN of Project 955 Bore, and the 5th modification 955A, with 2 more currently under construction. This submarine became the 3rd Bore in the Northern Fleet. The other 5 are part of the Pacific Fleet. Its length is 170 meters, and its submerged displacement is 24,000 tons. It carries 16 R-30 Bulava intercontinental ballistic missiles. So, Russia can produce more nuclear submarines than the US and UK combined. Important info there. And that's all in Russian here on this deal. But in any case, I bring this up because there was a video I did on their submarines and the torpedo/drone that is unmanned and can carry nuclear, thermonuclear apparently, bombs, and called the Poseidon. And I think that's part of what he's discussing here. And Metropolitan Neophytus, as I said, brought up the Poseidon and the Satan, particular nuclear bombs and torpedoes or /drones that are used by the submarines, I believe, or I'm not sure what Satan is. It might just be a bomb, because I think my son looked that one up. It's not really called Satan. That's what the West calls it. It's pretty deadly, obviously. And so, just a reminder on all of that. I'm going to go to this this video here. I only caught a little bit of it today, but on Dialogue Works, Martin A. Armstrong, he's known to be a predictor of things. I also founder of it. Well, he's the founder of Armstrong Economics, so he's involved in all the marketing, economic stuff, but also predicting geopolitical events. So he told, Nemo said, so he basically said that NATO, Martin Armstrong said NATO plans massive troop surge into Ukraine. He's saying 250,000 NATO troops will march in to help Ukraine. I guess you can gather up that many troops if you have enough European countries to come up with that. I've been told, and I've seen reports that most of these countries really don't have that big of armies. But in any case, that's what he's saying. There's one thing I will say right here. It's a very short one that Nima brings up a question here.
Martin, when you compare the two cases, the case of Ukraine and the case of the conflict in the Middle East, for the first time, we see that Iran and Israel are attacking each other directly. Mm-hmm. What was so much somehow different that the United States was negotiating, talking with Iran when the Israeli government has decided to attack Iran. And Donald Trump later on said he knew about it since day one. How do you compare the two conflicts, and which one is, in your opinion, is the worst one when it comes to the escalation toward World War III?
Well, probably Ukraine, because you're talking about threatening Russia. Look, you had Kalis, who is the former PM of Estonia. All right, she's now, there at the top in Brussels and the EU. Just listen to her rhetoric. Russia's too big, needs to be broken up. Can you imagine if Russia said that about the EU or the United States? They were, that's outrageous. But they, the hatred of Russia, her family. I mean, look, I don't understand it, but they obviously have no. Just hatred's there.
Okay, so he's basically saying it's more dangerous going against Russia, but I think there's a good reason for that, because Russia is a nuclear power. And again, ever since they started this provoking of Russia in last year, basically, when Biden was still in power, it was insanity, because nobody had done that in the past. Nobody had brought that up in the past, meaning it was too crazy to even think about. And when I was growing up, there was this understanding you didn't mess with, the nuclear powers did not push each other on these same things. It was a deterrence. In any case, so he's saying 250,000 NATO troops are supposedly going to surge into Ukraine. I'm trying to think of the prophecies on that and on what happens. And I'm just going to play a couple of short ones for you from different elders and see how they match up with Elder Joseph's 7 quote-unquote phases, because it's really hard to tell what's going to happen first with so many different elements to this war. First, I'm going to go with this one. And then I'll go to the next one. This one's only 42 seconds, so it's pretty short.
2022. A development that will rise from the Poland-Ukraine border. NATO will use Poland in something that will enrage the Russians, and Poland will receive a strong bite from the Russians. NATO, America, Poland, and England will take the war to another level. If NATO enters Ukraine when Zelensky calls them, it will not matter if they call it a peacekeeping force, because this NATO move for the Russians will be a cause for war. If that happens, then you will see Russia very different. It will turn into an raging bear that will spare no one. It will be like a volcanic lava that will wipe out everything in its path. Angry Russia will move south.
Whoa. Like lava. Wow. Okay. I hadn't seen that one in a long time. I find that very interesting that they're calling it peacekeeping. And as it said, this was in, I believe, what did he say? October 2022, from a old elder had said that. Of course, that is really possible, as we can see. Things just keep building up to that. And then to go from there, I'm going to bring up this one, this short little, I'm going to read this one. Okay, so this short one from Father Panagiotis Siliolis of Agraffa. Okay, so he fell asleep, meaning he died on November 12th, 2021, so not very long ago. So let's see what he has to say regarding this road and the NATO troops who will march to the Middle East. So this is not exactly the same thing, but I'm just going with this whole NATO march and going against Russia and all that. He had spoken accurately about the outbreak of the war with Turkey and the famine that will come, the result of which will be the new Third World War and the performance of the Constantinople strategy in Greece. This period is divided into several stages, some of which we are already living. So here he is talking about the stages, just like Elder Joseph has. This period is divided into several stages, some of which we are already living. And let's see, one of them, however, concerns Turkey's invasion of Greek islands, which God will allow just enough to give Russia the right to attack Turkey. Which will then have closed the sea straits. That is, Russia will work for us, thinking that it is working for itself, paying back its guilty silence in the Greek Revolution of 1821 and the genocide of 1913 to 1922, apparently. The publisher of the Stilos Orthodoxia, Dionysius Makris, yes, we're getting familiar with that man's name, confirmed what he had written in October 2023 in his newspaper regarding an amazing and unexpected prophecy of the Blessed Father Panagiotis I can't say his last name, the so-called Elder of Agraffa. Specifically, Father Panagiotis was traveling in 2011 with one of his godchildren named George Bouzikas on the road from Lamia to Domaku, one of the most dangerous roads in all of Greece. With numerous and continuous traffic accidents. Then suddenly the elder asked George, if there is a war, where do you have to show up? Okay, George, if there is a war, where do you have to show up? The army paper mentions Evros. You're not going to show up at Evros. You're going to Rio. You're going to wear a cross. And there you're going to be tasked with telling the residents to go up to the mountains to the right of Nafpaktos. Because NATO troops are going to come through and ravage everything, what they can find on their way. Then George asked the elder when the war would take place. George, the war will break out when the new road connecting Domoko to Lamia is completed. Then there will be a great famine in Greece, he says. Well, I think St. Paisio brought up the same thing. It won't last long. And then we will go to the city, Vasilvusa, also known as Hagia Sophia. The terrible thing is that after 10 days from that conversation, a new army paper came to George from the army, which said that in the event of conscription, he will be present no longer in Evros, but in Rio. Just as the elder of the Agrippa had foretold him, and the most terrible thing is that now, after 13 years since then, the new road Lamia to Domoku is in full development. As part of the big central road, E65, which will connect Lamia with Ignatia Odos. The entire Lamia-Domoko section, which is in the southern section of the central road, has been completed in the beginning of 2024. On Tuesday, April 23rd, the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis will hand over the southern section of the road, facilitating travel from Lamia to Kalambaka, as in 2023. The entire central road of Lamia, Ignatia 65, together with the northern section, is expected to be completed in 2025. Therefore, either in 2024 or 2025, war and famine will break out. Well, we know it's not 2024. So this war, as we saw, it's been going on, apparently, if you go by the phases, since 2008, but the trigger of it was supposed to have been, according to Neophytus's, the prophecies that he's been sharing with us, is that it was the event with Israel striking Iran's nuclear facility. So, indeed, we are in the war, and then the famine. I'm not sure what's going on with that in Greece, but a lot of people are having problems financially. Of course, we are already living the prelude. Now, he's saying this in 2021, as I understand it. Or before that, because he died in 2021. So he's speaking before he died in 2021. Of course, we are already living the prelude in Ukraine and Palestine. Interesting. But the main phase will begin when Turkey attacks the Greek islands. That's, of course, from the Greek point of view, that's when it's a big deal for them. And thus, finding a reason, Russia will then attack the current friend, Turkey, in quotes, friend, as you know, and will continue its way down to Israel. Yeah. Which lines up with the other prophecies by Elder Joseph of WWIII and St. Paisios, and then, of course, since St. Paisios interpreted and decoded and all that, St. Cosmas of Anatolia, that's 3. Then all of NATO will be forced to declare general war on Russia and its Islamic allies. And this again lines up with the phases. Phase 2 or 3 of Elder Joseph's prophecy. And mainly to Constantinople and the Sea Straits, yes. The troops will pass unbelievably like a roadster through Greece, he says, from Ignatia and to the connected new hubs, such as the Ionian Road A5 and perhaps the new Central Road A3 or E65, even reaching Nafpaktos. While at the same time, hundreds of NATO ships will be moving. As St. Cosmas of Anatolia had warned about 250 years ago, women and children should go out into the mountains because they will be in danger because of the NATO army. While we all should wear a cross visibly on the forehead, on the front and back of the clothes, otherwise NATO will kill us from afar, thinking we are Muslims. We are Muslim allies of Russia. Because then the satellites, GPS, internet, cell phones will be cut off. Important point there. And they won't even know where they are heading and where they have to go, but we know. In the mountains, in the mountain villages, in the mountain monasteries. Let me understand what orthodoxy means. I want to share those points that he had said about NATO marching on the mention of all of what he said there. I'm going to show you how this, so if we read again 2, 3, and 4 on this the phases that Elder Joseph had said. I'm just going to read it all again because this is important. It matches up with the elder Paniotis. An attack by America and Israel against Iran is imminent. The war for the blessing... Well, never mind that part. But war will also break out in our neighborhood. Albanians, Croats, Bosnian Muslims, Americans, and a few NATO members against the Orthodox of Russia and Serbia. In Greece, the government will fall and we will go to elections. Then exactly the junta that will rule Turkey will attack us, but the Russians will move quickly southwards, rushing to occupy Turkey as quickly as possible before NATO can reinforce it. Turkey will be hit hard and destroyed completely. The Russians will have previously invaded Georgia, Ukraine, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, pushing back the American troops. They will also invade the north, conquering all the Scandinavian countries, Finland, Norway, and Sweden, because while they seemingly maintain a neutral position, a great strike against the Russian population will be planned from their lands. The destruction they will suffer will shock humanity. Then the Russians will invade Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Romania, and Moldova. The people of the Orthodox states of Balkans, Serbs and Romanians, not the Bulgarians, will rise up and overthrow their corrupt governments, allying themselves with the Russians. Number 3, then the Russians will go down south to help their Arab allies, especially the Iranians, who will be attacked by the Americans. The Americans will have captured the coastal zone of Iran after a fierce struggle, but they will not be able to advance inside the country because of the great resistance they will receive. The Russians will sweep across Persia and destroy the American forces in the east. Then they will invade Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Kuwait, and finally Israel. Then, and this is still part of 3, then there will be the first attempt to use nuclear weapons by the U.S. and Israel, but the Russians will neutralize them. So this is after Russia goes down and stops at Mount of Olives, outside of Jerusalem, I believe, in that area. So this is when they're going to first attempt to use nuclear weapons by the U.S. and Israel, but the Russians will neutralize them, causing a global blackout of energy and communications. It's interesting because the elder from Agrippa brought this up, that they wouldn't be able to know where they're going because the GPS, the cell phones, and satellites, everything's going to be out. I don't know how long that's going to be out, but there's a pious Orthodox elderly woman who is a mentor to my oldest son, who told us back in, I think, 2023 or something like that, to make sure you have batteries for your flashlights, have your candles, because this is gonna happen. She just mentioned there's gonna be a power outage all around. Anyway, it says in parentheses, the book of Revelation refers to what was said by Christ himself about the soldiers of God when they are on the Mount of Olives. That would be Russians. The great earthquake will open it in two, and they will be so frightened that they will beat each other. Now, I assume that it's not going to be. I assume he means like, I'm not sure. It is the great earthquake that will shake the whole Mediterranean. This may be when King Jong is revealed. Remember the marble king, whose sword is out of its scabbard or sheath. King John is revealed in Hagia Sophia at the same time, and it will mark the Greek world conquest. Without this meaning that there will not be Russian soldiers in Israel and Chinese in the Euphrates. And it continues on. Russians will advance to Egypt, and they will seize the Suez Canal. During the advance of the Russians in Egypt, their troops will pass through Greek air and land space quickly without Greece suffering any damage. This ability to move a large number of troops in a short period of time will result in strategic advantage over their opponents. Then they will turn to the Balkans to help the Serbs, who will be attacked by NATO, Muslim, and Catholic Balkan states and win. And you see how this they're bringing that up then. So that's number 2 issue of saying, okay, they're going to go to the help. This is more explaining when Russia would go and help the Serbs. That was kind of an overview, it seems to me, because there was all these other things to have to put out there. In any case, there's many things going on here, so I wanted to share that portion since this man was bringing up the troops of NATO and all that, and it just struck my memory of all of this, and so I wanted to share it with you. I sure hope you got a lot out of that. Found it interesting or beneficial in any way. Please let me know in comments below this video if you'd like to share anything. It is late. I am tired, but I really wanted to share this, so thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for following my channel and liking my videos and all that, and for your support. I hope you have a blessed night. Until next time.